And what is the tax and...
Well, the current tax system and the current welfare system interact in a way that makes it unattractive to work, unattractive to employ people, and it's horrendously inefficient and wasteful. We have billions of dollars that go into Canberra, slosh around and come back out, which we shouldn't have to do. We have people who are deterred from working by the combination of income tax and welfare clawbacks, and we have businesses that are deterred from hiring people by the fact that they cannot agree on a wage with the person at their discretion, through negotiation. Now, our reform plan sweeps all that away in a single, step. Basically, we propose a plan where there's a $30,000 tax-free threshold. Below $30,000, you get what's called a negative income tax. For every dollar less than $30,000 you earn, the government pays you 30 cents, and that replaces welfare. Above $30,000, you pay a 30-cent income tax flat, and that replaces the current tax system. Now, the beauty of this is that it sweeps away all these problems at a stroke. There's no more churning, because if you're paying tax, you're not receiving welfare. And if you're receiving welfare, you're not paying tax. It encourages people to work because you will never give up in any time more than 30 cents of any dollar that you earn. At the moment, there are times where you could be giving up 60 or 70 cents in every dollar you go out and earn. In which case, why would people get off welfare? They'll just stay at home, and I think that's a tragedy. What we know from decades of research is that the main cause of poverty is unemployment. And amongst other things, in terms of its efficiencies and its design, this will help to reduce poverty in Australia by increasing employment.
Okay, so isn't this making the rich richer and the poor poorer by making everyone pay the same amount of tax?
No, well, as I say, the main cause of poverty is not the divide between rich and poor. The main cause of poverty is unemployment. And this reform would probably be the most important single reform for improving employment prospects for people at the bottom. At the moment, it's difficult for them to find work. They are deterred from working on their side by the high effective tax rates that they have to pay, both income tax and welfare clawback. And businesses are deterred from hiring them because they tend to be less well educated, less skilled. But the business can't say, look, I recognise that I want to employ you, but you're not worth the minimum wage. Part of the program is to abolish or drastically reduce the minimum wage to encourage employment on the business side, with the safety net that you always have the negative income tax. It's always there protecting you and subsidising your position.
Okay, so this addresses the dole, for example, but what about other welfare programs like students who are living on youth allowance or what have you? What about those sort of welfare payments?
Yep, basically everything gets rolled into the same scheme with one major exception. We would retain the age pension. We would introduce a program for phasing that out over the next 20 or 30 years. Unfortunately, it's not something, in fact, you couldn't just whip it out from under people. It'd be a bit cruel to do that to people who built their entire lives around, planning for living off the pension when they're retired. With the introduction of compulsory superannuation in Australia, that will not be necessary in the future, but it is still necessary now. So that's one specific place where we don't force that on people. We maintain the age pension. But pretty much everything else gets rolled into the scheme. Youth allowance gets abolished and replaced with it. Austerity gets abolished and replaced with this scheme. And again, it's the same thing as before. With austerity, with youth allowance, it gets clawed back very savagely. If you go even for 1 day of work a week, you lose a lot of that money. With our scheme, you only ever give up 30%, no matter what you're earning, no matter what you're doing.
Can you give us a bit of an example of how your system is different to those of Rudd and Howard and what they're planning to introduce if they are elected?
Sure. What breaks my heart about this current round of tax debate is how shallow it actually is. To start with, the Howard government taxes more than any other government in history. They are taxing 34% more than the Keating government. That's even when you've adjusted for inflation, when you've adjusted for population, and it's insane. And adjusting for the GST as well. It's still 34% higher than the Keating government, which everyone remembers as a fairly profligate operation. The $34 billion tax cuts don't kick in immediately. They take 5 years. How convenient. But that's the headline, $34 billion. And in fact, if you look at it, it's mostly just giving back bracket creep. It's just giving back the money that was ours anyway. If the brackets were indexed to inflation, there wouldn't be $34 billion to give back. We'd have it in our own pockets. Now, the tax and welfare program, the 30-30 plan that we propose, gives back at least $40 billion immediately. Now, I say at least $40 billion because that's based on the original 2005 policy paper on the matter. Since then, the revenue position of the Commonwealth has expanded drastically, mostly through a boom in company tax, which itself comes from the resources boom. Mining companies are making a lot of money, and that works its way into the budget as well. I can't remember what the original question is now.
Compare and contrast.
Oh yes, thank you. Now the problem with the RUD plan, by contrast, it has the same problems again. It's not really giving back additional taxes, it's just giving back what was ours in the first place. I have specific problems with some of the programs he's announced for computer subsidies for education. Geez, it sounds fantastic in a press release, but there are a number of problems which he's not talking about. It's just going to increase the complexity of the tax system. That's another 50 or 100 pages, and I should probably mention that the Tax Act already runs to 10,000 pages in Australia. 10,000. That's not including the regulations. Okay. You add this new thing, that's another 50 pages, that's another bunch of boxes that people have to fill out in the tax pack. It's more paperwork. The only people that will actually benefit are Jerry Harvey, who will make an absolute packet out of this. Thank you, government. Okay, and his shareholders, of course. Buy Harvey Norman shares if you're interested. And second of all, the other people who will do well out of it are those people who are good already at these sorts of schemes, of navigating the bureaucracy, of filling in the right forms, calling the right people, doing the right thing. Poor people who don't have access to that kind of tax planning are less likely to benefit from this than they might think. And of course, the final problem is that it will in fact drive up the cost of computers. So where's the point? It just balances itself out. They take money off you, they drive up the cost of computers, it favours the rich, and it does Jerry Harvey a favour. I don't see why it's a good policy at all.
Fair enough.